appreciate the Lord for another day He blessed us with. All right, we're here to study the word of the Lord. We are dealing with the subject of Satan and demons. Oh my. Anybody here love Satan? No, sir. I'm just trying to see if you all woke. Anybody love the devil? All right. So we're dealing with Satan. Demons, and it's also called, in theological terms, demonology or satanology. And that simply means the study of Satan, the study of demons. Okay? Now, you all had an assignment. Your assignment was to take one of the Gospels and go through the Gospel of your choice and identify the passages of the Scriptures that has to do with demons. And what that does is, one, helps us to understand the number of times that a gospel may address the topic or the subject, and also helps us to understand by the context that scripture is in what the Bible is actually saying about demon or devil. So I want you to hold those papers for now. We're going to come back to it, because I know that everybody did their homework. I like to believe that everybody, that includes you and you, that everybody did their homework. All right, I know Brother Matt got his. I ain't worried about Brother Matt. Lord to help. All right. Now let us remind ourselves of a couple of things that the Bible teaches us. Now, when we talk about Satan, generally, when we talk about Satan, we look at him or consider him as what some would call the chief. Okay, the chief of demons or devils, even to the point where he is sometimes singularly called the devil. And being the devil, he is also recognized as the chief of the devils. He is their leader. Okay? So when we talk about Satan and we look at the scriptures, you'll see that the scriptures, Satan is called by a number of names in the Bible. All right? And all of these refer to him. Such as not only is he identified as Satan, but he's identified as the devil. Right. Okay. He's also identified as the wicked one. Now, all demons are wicked, but once again, Satan, who is their ruler, he is the wicked one. Mm-hmm. And it's important for us to understand and know something about who we're dealing with. Right. He's also called the enemy. All of us have an enemy. Satan is enemy number 1B. Amen. Sure. Number 1 can be who? Oh, y'all don't want to say it. Y'all don't want to say it. All right, so since we're talking about Satan, we'll just leave him at number 1 right now. Satan, enemy number 1. Satan is also identified or called, and this is important, the father of lies. Right. Oh my, do not play that cheap or look at that in any way as not important. He's also believed to be, as Paul used this term, the God, small g, of this world. Right. Remember we were dealing with Elohim, gods. Satan is identified as the God of this world. It is believed, and we're going to look at a couple passages today, that Satan in his original state was Lucifer, who was known as the shining light or anointed cherub. And remember when we talked about cherub or cherubim, cherubim is the plural of cherub. Lucifer, we'll see, is identified as cherub, which identifies him as a single personality or a single individual. So when we use the plural of devils, that is inclusive of all evil spirits. When you see the term the devil, that is dealing with the one individual, Satan, once again, who is believed to have been Lucifer in his original state. Somebody said it like this, and I believe this is a quote by Schofield that says, and it's interesting to think about, it says that if Lucifer never failed, then there would be no Satan. And if there was no Satan, there would be no demons. That was something to think about, because by what appears to be evidence that we'll come across in the scriptures, it was Satan that influenced demons. Now, some may argue that and say, well, who knows? It still could have been, because demons had the right to choose as well. That's possible, but it was just a thought-provoking statement. You don't have to agree with that. You don't have to accept that. But if there was no Satan, there may not be any demons. When we talk about devils, and I'll hit on demons, you see demons is in the plural. The reason it is in the plural is because demons is not limited to one. How many demons are there? All right, many. There's multiple. So when we talk about demons, and another word that we may hear more, that we hear used from time to time, demons is more the common word, but devils, and the devils that's in the plural. And we'll come across a passage or so that also refers to them as angels. Now, most of the time when we use the word angel, we are looking at good angels, right? But demons are called angels also. And why are demons called angels? Brother Matt, help us out.
Because they are fallen angels.
Okay, so they are angel beings. They were created and they fell. So now they take on another name that defines them. So just like Lucifer in his original state, shining one, now he takes on the name of Satan. Demons in their apparently their original state, because remember, God created everything. Right. He created everything in his original state. It was what? Good. There was nothing evil, nothing bad. It was all good. So God did not create demons per se. He created angels who became demons. God did not create Satan to be Satan. He created Lucifer, and Lucifer became. Are we following that so far? Amen. And that should not be overly difficult, hopefully, to receive, because all of us were created, when we were born, we came into this world how? Sinners. Can I get an amen from everybody? None of y'all came here saved. The devil is a liar. You came out of that womb a sin creature. But now we are what? We're saints. We're saints. We are born again believers. So our previous state was sinner. Now in God we're saints. All right. So with that said, we want to look at a couple passages here. that refers to Lucifer. Now, the passages that we are going to read, I will already admit that by some, some is controversial to them, but let us just look at it and see what we can glean from these passages. The first passage that we're going to go to today is Ezekiel chapter number 14.
Isaiah.
I'm going to Ezekiel 28. In Ezekiel chapter 28, we direct your attention there, and we will read together verse number 11. Ezekiel 28, verse 11. All right. So what do we have here in verse 11? Ezekiel 28, verse 11. You all had the book of Ezekiel, right?
Amen.
Okay. Is that on the left side of the Bible or the right side?
Huh?
Ezekiel. Is it on the left side or the right side?
On the left side.
It's on the left side, Old Testament. We say left side, we're talking about Old Testament. Right side would be New Testament. All right, 28, verse 11, let us read. And it reads like this. It says, moreover what? The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus saith the Lord God.
You were the seal of perfection.
You are the seal of perfection, full of wisdom, and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The sardust, topaz, diamond, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald with gold. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you the day you were created. Did we lose some of you all? All right, come on, let's read verse 14. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of what? Fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you. By the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore, I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings, that they might gaze at you. You defiled your sanctuaries by the multitude of your iniquities, by the iniquity of your trading. Therefore I brought fire from your midst. It devoured you. And I turned you to ashes upon the earth, in the sight of all who saw you. And the last verse, all who knew you among the peoples are astonished at you. You have become a horror, and you shall be no more forever. Now, I'll start out by saying this. One of the reasons this is a controversial passage with some is because it identifies what appears to be an earthly king by the, or labeled as or recognized as the king of Tyre. So some say, well, it's talking about the king of Tyre, and it's just using symbolic language to bring about a point of this king being lifted up.
Right.
When you study the areas of Tyre and Sidon, those were very prosperous areas throughout history. They were very rich during certain times of history. Other nations looked at them in the time of trading to gain some of their wealth or to trade with them to gain for monetary gain. And Tyre and Sidon, Jesus even referred to these areas in his ministry. And he talked about how they were lifted up in pride, but he also used them as an illustration. He says things such as, if they heard what you heard, they would have long ago repented.
Long ago.
So Tyre and Sidon were areas, as I said, that had their heightening times throughout history. So the prophet is addressing the king of Tyre, but as you read the language here, he also is making statements that definitely could not apply to a human king.
Amen.
Some of it definitely applies, the overarching imagery or point that he is conveying, it applies in a sense that the king was lifted up. And sometimes people, when they get lifted up in their mind can go, 100 miles down the road thinking that they are all that.
Amen.
I remember we talked about Herod, I believe on last week, how Herod got lifted up and the people were giving him high praise, and Herod was accepting all of that. Yeah, they were honoring him like they would a god. And what happened? God allowed worms to break out over his body and eat him alive. Why? Because he got lifted up. So when we look at a passage like Ezekiel, and we look throughout the book of Ezekiel, Ezekiel uses pictures that he gained in visions that God had given him all throughout this book. So it's very important to pay attention to what Ezekiel is saying, the visions that he's using, the symbolism that he's using, the hyperbole that he may use, or whatever area this language may fit, because there is a message that is to what? To be drawn out of what he is saying. So the verses that we read from verses 14 through 19, and you look at verse 14, he says, you were the anointed cherub. Now we know physically that the king of Tyre was not a cherub. Right. Okay, he was a real person. Anyone that sat on the throne was a real person. Right. But when he uses the word cherub, in our studies, we have come to find out that a cherub is a supernatural being that is created by God. And we also, in that many times, and some, would kind of argue this, and we kind of talked about it, and we'll get back and talking about it, but a cherub would come in what we would identify as the angelic family. Okay, it's an angelic being. So when he uses cherub, it seems to, what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, have perhaps a dual reference. This passage is referencing certain things about the earthly king, but it also is referencing someone or something that is supernatural. All right, so we have the cherub who covers, and that word covers, and other translation, more modern translation, it may use the word guard. And remember, this is one of the functions of angelic beings. Not all of them, but remember in Isaiah chapter number 6, we had seraphims, and what did they do? They were around the throne 24/7, crying, holy, holy, holy. So part of the mission and the function of a cherub is to guard the throne. So this cherub, singular, he covers. Now, God is telling Ezekiel, the son of man, to prophesy, to speak. God is speaking through the prophet. What does God say through the prophet? He says to the cherub, the second line of verse 14, I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God.
Right.
The holy mountain of God perhaps represents God's dwelling place. The holy mountain of God. In other words, God is saying, I established you and I allowed you in. And I had given you responsibility. Now remember, all angels are responsible to God.
Right.
No angel has a right to determine his ministry.
Right.
It's God that determines it. So God allowed this cherub to dwell in his mountain, to dwell in his presence, and to be part of the angelic host or the heavenly host that was a part of guarding the throne. Verse 15. Well, I'm sorry, let's get that last part of verse 14. He says, you walk back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. Here again, this is imagery that is used when it comes to the very presence of God. We see this throughout the Bible. The Bible even teaches us in the book of Malachi that God is a consuming fire. So around God's throne, we have these this imagery, we have these illustrations about fiery stones, the presence of God, lightning, and then we're going to see all of these other precious stones that seems to depict something about the glory of God. This cherub, not the natural king, because no natural king ever been in the presence of God like this.
Right.
And if you go in the presence of God like this naturally, that'll be your last visit. And that's not going to last long. Okay? Because you and I and our physical bodies can't take it. So it is so important to recognize that. So he says in verse 15, watch this, you were what? Perfect in your ways from the day you were created. That's a very interesting statement. From the day you were created. No human being in any way was perfect in that sense from the day that they were birthed. But he said in your original state here, you were created and you were perfect in your ways. Wow, that is interesting. He says, till. We would say until. Some of us still say till. You was all right till. Yeah, you know, everything was going along smooth till. So till what? Iniquity was found in you. Now, when it comes to the earthly king was doing well because remember, no one ascends to the throne unless God allows it. Right. God is in control of everything. So God allows it. Now we can discuss how God allows it to whatever extent we may be able to discuss it. You know, God allows it because he allows men to do what they want to do, and he, in a sense, reserves or hold back his judgment, you know, whatever. All of that can be discussed and come into play. But God allowed the king of Tyre to ascend to the throne. God allowed Tyre to be prosperous. God allowed them. It was the same with Saul. God allowed Saul. I know oftentimes the side we hear about preaching was that Saul wasn't chosen. David was a chosen one. Saul was chosen. Okay, and Saul was elected, and Saul went to the throne. But David was what? The king after God's own heart. All right? So, the king of Tyre ascends to the throne, is doing well. God allowed him to be blessed. God allowed him to prosper. And the danger of iniquity, and when we talk about iniquity, then iniquity can be defined from the standpoint of iniquity is a general term that is used, but when you specify it, it could be different types of various types of sin. We're going to find out here what the specific sin, what the specific iniquity was here. All right? Till iniquity was found in you. Notice the term, iniquity found in you. In you. Something was going on where? In the heart. Okay? And in that heart, your mind, everything, you know, your soulish area, all of that comes into play. Iniquity was found in you. Now, before iniquity was found in you, you were doing all right. You were perfect. I mean, you had it going on. But something happened. One day, iniquity crept up. Now, look at what happened. Verse 16, it says, by the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within. Now, you all may remember, hopefully, the message on Sunday morning when we were talking about how God was telling Israel to don't get caught up in all what you have, don't take bribes, don't oppress the poor, don't mistreat people. The danger of prosperity can get a person's heart and get their mind until they start doing wicked things. What happens? Sometimes people, when they have, what do they want? More. They want more. And when you have and want more, a number of things can happen. God told Israel, don't you oppress. Because when you oppress the poor, you can do that in a very violent way. Start whipping them and beating them and becoming partial. So, and this is what would happen with many kings, and even in dictatorships today in certain countries, this kind of stuff can happen. I know places right now, such as over in Haiti, where there are people who are oppressed, who cannot get access to fresh water, and by some that have gone over there and have studied it and searched it out, there is enough fresh water in that land to refresh everybody. But when there is a monopoly, when there's apartheid, when there's all of these other issues that they keep people from getting to fresh water. And some say they have even poisoned the fresh water. I don't know, how true that is, but this is what they say. They have poisoned the fresh water, have kept the poor from getting to fresh water. And of course, when we were over there, we seen people with one little bucket of water for the day. And they use that to bathe their body from head to toe with one little bucket of water. And we turn the water on in 5 buckets just to get it hot. You put it in, I can't do this, it's too cold. We just let it run. I mean, full force. We don't turn they'll turn that thing and water just pouring out. You not know people over there would love that opportunity, but they don't have it. So I get your hand in 1 second. Let me catch this. He says, you became filled with violence. Why? Because something's going on in the heart. Want more and will do what? Go to any expense to get it. He says, and when you got filled with violence within, which is iniquity, you sinned. The iniquities of the heart. Oh my. He says, therefore, I, God, cast you as a profane thing. Now we following this? God says, now you're profane. Originally, you wasn't like that. Originally, you were perfect. But something happened to you that you allowed to happen. You allowed iniquity to get in your heart. And God said, once that happened, I profaned you. In other words, I counted you as no longer perfect. I counted you profane, or I counted you wicked. And the reason I counted you wicked is because of the iniquity that's going on the inside. Oftentimes, when we talk about iniquities and things of that nature, one of the dangers about iniquity is that sometimes on the outside, things can look copacetic. Things can look like they're fine. But what does God know? God knows the thoughts, the intents of the heart. He knows the motive. He knows what people are thinking. Right now, it may not look like it, but God knows him. Nothing is hid from him. What kind of eye does God have? An all-seeing eye. His eyes are going to and fro, beholding what? The good and the evil. So now remember, who is he referring to here? All right. Well, he's talking about the king of Tyre, but also who? The cherub. The cherub. Okay. Now. Of course, he's becoming Satan, but let's not get the cherub. The cherub. They had then the opportunity to exercise their will and make choices. Now this is interesting. God allowed them to have the ability to make choices, but then what does God do? God turns around and he holds them accountable for the choices that they make. Now let's come all the way down to the 21st century. God makes us creatures where we have the ability to choose and make decisions. The beauty of God is he points out what's right to do, shares with us everything we need to know what's right to do, but then he holds us accountable for the decisions that we make. That's what he did with the cherub. So he goes on to say, now you filled with violence, you are profane. He says, I cast you out as profane, and along with that, I cast you out of the mountain of God. And I destroyed you, O covering cherub. I made a statement a couple weeks ago in the sermon. It was in line with the sermon. And I made the statement, I said, yeah, God will kill you. And I felt, I felt the audience. Because people don't like you to talk like that. and I'm very well aware. I've been in ministry long enough. People don't want you, they want you to tell, want you to tell them something good. But I remind you, I said, God will kill you. And he will. God even kill some of his saints who won't do right. Oh, see, I'm feeling it now. But it was, God did some things. God didn't let Moses go into the promised land, and Moses saw the glory of God in a way that ain't none of us seen it. Well, I say that heads go down. But my point is this, and that's not to scare. And remember, we should not just assume that Ananias and Sapphira, lost out and went to hell. I mean, they could have. We don't know. But we don't have to take a position just to assume that. That could have been their judgment right there, because they lied. Now, how many of you, now watch it. Any of y'all know any saints that have ever lied? Okay, I rest my case. Let's move on. So they lied, and a lot of people, okay, well, they lied, they're gonna wake up here. The Bible doesn't tell us where they went. Right. But if they were in church, and if they were saved, and they may have been, they lied, and God said, I don't like this. I don't like this. And they dropped dead. Evidently in the congregation. And you might see them in heaven. You just might see them in heaven. I know some of y'all struggle. The Bible doesn't tell us where they went. Samson.
Hello.
You're going to see Samson in heaven by all of the indication of Scripture. And, ooh, Lord have mercy. Samson did some things. Ooh, Lord. Now, none of that is justification for say, well, Samson did it, so man, look how many chances I got. And Samson did this, Samson did that, Samson did the other, Samson fooled around with Delilah, fooled around with the other one, so I can do all the no, you can't. And the question now becomes, are you saved? If you want to do those things. So God dealt with this cherub, who was perfect prior to iniquity in all his ways. God, I'm kicking you out of the mountain of God. I'm going to destroy you, O covering cherub. And destroy also has reference that God kicked him out, and no longer did he have his position of guard, of covering. That was over. And when God destroys, understand the language of the Bible. When God destroy does not all the time mean that immediately right now that cherubim is wiped out. But he's destroyed, he lost his position, he lost his place, he no longer was in the mountain, and then judgment is still pending. There is still what is called impending judgment for all cherubs and fallen angels and demons that have, violated God. And ultimately, all will be destroyed in the lake of fire. Okay? So, says from the midst of the fiery stones, you got to go, cherub. And here's why, verse 17. Let's read. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. So what are some of the ways we say that today? You're stuck on you. Caught up. So any king, and if you remember this, any king that get caught up, remember Nebuchadnezzar? He got caught up and saying, you know, look what I've done. Stepped out on the balcony of the palace, said, look at all what I've accomplished. God said, okay, you think you did all of that? How many of us know it was God that called Nebuchadnezzar to be able to do what he did?
Yes.
God used him as a king from the north, as a lion from the north, to bring judgment upon his disobedient people. And he got caught up, saying, oh, look at what I have done. God said, let me tell you something. You know, I mean, and remember, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you a spectacle to everybody. But God is interesting. God said, I'm going to do this. And when you go down, even as a king, I'm not going to let, right now, at this point, this season, I'm not going to even let another nation come in and take the power of Babylon away from them. Now that is interesting, because when the king go down like that, somebody is saying, man, okay, I got a chance to come in. But that wasn't the season. And not only that, but God allowed Nebuchadnezzar to remain king while he was eating grass like an ox. While his hair grew out like bird feathers. While his nails grew out like eagle claws. Nebuchadnezzar went insane for 7 years and hung outside. And the dew of the morning rested upon him. That's because who's in control? God. And one of the most egregious sins that anybody can carry out is the sin of pride. Now, so you're lifted up in your own beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. When we're dealing with the book of Proverbs in our evening sessions, and of course it talks about wisdom, the ability to use information properly and to have discretion. This man got caught up. Now, what is happening right here, we can see this happening in various places throughout the United States of America. People are caught up in themselves, and they do not operate in the wisdom of God.
Right.
You got a chance to watch some of the memorial service yesterday, and one of the things that I was just taken back about is that nobody mentioned God.
Took note of that.
Kobe Bryant and his daughter, nobody mentioned God. You know, the wife did say they're walking in heaven. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I would love to believe that, but I mean, I don't know anything else about his Christian walk, if there was one, but nobody. And you see all of these people, I mean, Hollywood athletes, look like somebody. You know, Kimball, there's somebody should have mentioned God. About the closest is Rob Pelinka. He did get up and he talked about going to the Catholic Mass.
Right.
That he had, Kobe had went with him, you know. I don't know if that was once or twice or however long, but I got to look at 25,000 people and nobody's mentioning God, but they can get up and say MF.
Yeah.
Or
All
use
right,
another curse word. And then we're automatically going to put people in heaven. God don't operate like that. Nothing foul is going into heaven. It's not going to happen. If God would deal with a cherub, an anointed cherub like this, you think we're going to allow, he's going to allow anything to get in heaven? No. We need to recognize.
Yes.
And it's so unfortunate, you know, another athlete came out, talked about his 12-year-old son that who says that he has discovered himself at 12 and wants to feel that he's in the wrong body. Now he wants to have the operation and change his gender. Now remember, you can't even change your gender with an operation. You can change your body, but you can't change your gender. Okay, God is not going to introduce himself and say, okay, I made you a male. You had an operation, and now you have certain things that appear to be female. So I accept what you did. God doesn't operate like that with God. People are more caught up in their own splendor and what they consider
Amen,
as
Bishop.
beauty,
Amen.
but not the wisdom of God.
Teach.
The wisdom of God would have told this anointed cherub that you got the best thing going.
Mm-hmm.
There's other heavenly hosts that don't have what you have.
Right.
There are other angelic beings that are operating and functioning in what they do, but you in the mountain of God, guarding the throne. Oh my goodness. And iniquity says, I do look pretty good, don't I? I got all of this going on, don't I? Man, look at me. Wow. Ain't nobody got it like me. The danger of me. God says, here's what you did. Remember, everybody is responsible for their own sin. When you don't know the difference between right and wrong, you're responsible for your own sin. He says in verse, the second part of verse 17, you corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor, and God said, I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings, that they might gaze at you. And wasn't there somebody gazing at Nebuchadnezzar? That's how the story was told. They saw what happened for seven solid years. All of that steak and chicken and turkey he was eating for 7 years. He couldn't eat any of that. The fine wine, he couldn't drink any of that. Doc was eating grass for 7 years. But God is just incredible and merciful. He allowed Nebuchadnezzar after 7 years to come back to himself. When Nebuchadnezzar came back preaching. I don't know whether God called that man preaching. He never preached. That one sermon he preached. His subject was centered around there is a God who rules in the heavens. And that's all God wanted everybody to recognize. Want the king to recognize that. Want the saints to recognize that. I mean, sometimes you can forget that there's a God that rules in heaven. Oh, I'm going through right now. I just don't know how I'm going to make it. You're going to make it by that God that rules in heaven.
Amen.
I just don't know. I just said this one is just too difficult. Oh, it ain't difficult for God.
Amen, Bishop.
He rules in the heavens. So he goes on to say, he said in verse 18, you defile your sanctuary. And what this is saying is that cherub and the king, they really had responsibility and had a lot going for them. Sanctuaries, dwelling places, which seems to denote that you were also over. You were responsible for what went on in the assembly. And how many of us know that the angels had church? Right. Okay, let the record reflect. I lost 85% of the congregation. The angels, the sons of God, they come together and they sing.
Yeah. Yep.
Amen.
So this cherub here seems, he uses the term sanctuary. Sanctuary, where people come to assemble. You defiled it. You messed up church. By the multitude of your iniquities. Now notice, he started out saying you were lifted up in your splendor and beauty. Now he goes on to say, that led to what? Multitude of iniquities. Started out stuck on you, but that led multitudes. By the iniquity of your trading, therefore I brought fire from your midst, it devoured you. And I turned you to ashes upon the earth. Every nation that forgets God, what happens? So every nation that is ruled by a political figure, a king, president, whatever it may be, if they do not honor God, God has the last say, and God will judge every nation. Okay, our time is on, but let's get this. Let's go to the account in Isaiah chapter 14. And there's something very, very important that I want you to catch it. So this may have a dual reference. One, we know is about the cherub. Also about the king of Tyre. So this cherub, that was this angelic being that was perfect, something happened. Now this cherub is brought down. No longer does this cherub rule like it once did. Now let's see what the account in Isaiah chapter 14 helps us to see and understand. Isaiah 14, verse 12. And this seems to coincide and be a reference or cross-reference to what God spoke through the prophet Ezekiel. He is now speaking through the prophet Isaiah. And Isaiah gives some very interesting detail that may reference what the prophet is talking about in Ezekiel chapter 28. Verse 12, let's read. How you are fallen from heaven, the mountain of God, God's dwelling place. O Lucifer. Now he identifies, he names. O Lucifer, O shining one. O one who had beauty. O one who had splendor. That's what shining one has reference to. Son of the morning. How you are what? Cut down to the ground. And didn't God say, I'll cast you down to the ground in Ezekiel 28? Watch this. You who weaken the nation. So this is what a wicked king would do. A wicked king would weaken the nation. Right. So now you can see the Jetapole, or actually I should say the dual reference here to the earthly king who is responsible for weakening the nation by his own pride and sin. Okay, as well as this Lucifer who was the bright one. Verse 13, let's read. For you have what? Said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the further sides of the north. North represents height, and high as he could go. He said, I'm going to do this. Watch this. He said what? I will ascend, verse 14, above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Verse 15. Yeah. Oh, you think so? You done psyched yourself out. And what does the Bible call this kind of individual in Proverbs? Proverbs. Call him a fool. Oh, you fool, you think so? He said, yet you shall what? Be brought down to Sheol. You're going to be brought down to the grave. You're going to be brought down to the place of the dead. You're going to be brought down to eternal destruction. Didn't God say in Ezekiel 28 that I will destroy you? Now, here's what I want you to catch. Let us look over this, and time is moving on. Verse 13, you have said in your heart. Where does iniquity start? In the heart. In the heart. That's where it festers. That's where it carries itself out. A thought is planted, which means a seed is planted in the heart, and it begins to grow the longer it lingers there. That's why it is so important that anytime a thought comes and it gets in the heart, that for a believer must be quick to go to God. Say, God, wash me and cleanse me with the washing of water by your word. Take it out of me. Cleanse me. Do not allow iniquity to linger in the heart. Because iniquity, the ultimate destruction, is a person is coming down. Now, when we look at verse 13, you have said in your heart. Who said? You said, not God. You said. You said in your heart. You're convincing yourself in your heart. I'm fine. I'm beautiful. I am splendid. There is nobody like me. Right. Nobody in the world look as good as I do. Nobody has more going for them than I do. I'm the smartest thing around. Now notice. The second line. What does that say? Come on, y'all talk to me. We're going to close now. Let's close good. What does that say?
I will.
What does that say?
I will.
What does that say? Come on, move on. What does 14 say? Lord have mercy. I. What is the word that the Bible calls that? What's the middle letter of pride? And pride is what? What's the middle letter of sin? And pride and sin says that I want to be what? Big. What's the middle letter of big? Tell somebody, get rid of the I. It's better to be a BG than a BIG. Whatever that is. I don't know what BG is. It's better to be SN than caught up in SIN. Whatever that is, y'all figure that out. I have no clue. But pride, and what does the Bible teach us? Remember Proverbs 16:18. Proverbs 16 and 18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So make a note, write this down if you don't mind, please. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse number 6. Talks about the danger of being lifted up in pride. Matter of fact, I'll read it and we'll close out there because this is so important. Now I know we didn't. We're going to get to your paper. Hold on to those papers. We're going to get to the papers. Not today, but we're going to get to them. All right, but 1 Timothy 3, verse number 6. It talks about the office of a bishop, an elder, overseer of the church. It says this, that he is not to be a novice, lest being puffed up, the King James Version, I believe, says lifted up with pride. If he is, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. So here's another scripture. If we're doing what is called cross-referencing, this verse may help us understand what Isaiah 14 is talking about and what Ezekiel 28 is talking about, because the cherub that we read was what? Lifted up. In Isaiah 14, Lucifer is saying what? I. And God said, you're caught up in yourself, I'm going to bring you down. First, Paul said, 1 Timothy 3:6, don't be a novice, because you can get lifted up in pride and fall into the same condemnation of who? The devil. So these passages are, in my estimations, clear, pretty clear to me that it is referring to this cherub who fell. And this cherub who fell had power. Now notice what God didn't do. God didn't take all of his power away. He didn't take the throne away from Nebuchadnezzar. But this anointed cherub is fallen, and now he is the devil. And this is who we are contending with. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, you are not my number one adversary. Some of y'all ain't saying nothing. If you don't, you better get with me. Who's your number one? It's the devil. The devil don't like you. And now the devil was his anointed cherub. Remember the sanctuary? He was over the assembly of the sanctuary. He hasn't lost all of his leadership skills either.
Amen.
We're going to show you that he is now not over the heavenly sanctuary, but he got an entourage.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where them demons come in at that you all did. T, what book did you read through? You read through John? Brother Hilson, what book you read through? Matthew. You read through Matthews. All right, Tanya, what book you? Mark. You read through Mark. You took this short since you got you got 3 kids. That's all right. That's all right. All right, Didi, what book you? You went through Luke. Okay. All right. And how many times? Did you count how many times?
I got 18.
18. All right. Dr. Anderson, what book do you go through?
Matthew.
And how many you come up with in Matthew?
Oh, a whole lot.
A whole lot. So you said about 18 in Luke? Okay, yeah, Matthew has at least that many. I believe it is. I had it and I had to rewrite it because the original notebook I wrote in, I got some notebooks that look alike. And you can be running and grab one, think you got the right one, and end up having the wrong one. Sister Tanisha, what book did you?
Yeah, I was in Luke too.
You was in Luke? Okay, all right. So, little T, you did Mark. All right, now we good. Okay, yes.
Bishop, we got homework for next week?
Okay. No, we're going to finish on Satan. Hey, when I leave, y'all have at it. Y'all have at it. Yes, ma'am.
Make him do it.
Make him do it. That may be a good idea. Nobody have homework but Dr. Anderson. Okay. Elder Greg had a quick question and we'll close out.
It was just interesting, just looking at when he was in the book of Ezekiel. It seems like God allowed Satan, like he did with the Amorites. You say when iniquity was found, it seemed like he'd put him out then.
Yeah.
But he allowed him to continue. It's like with the Amorites, and like when Moses, back in, he said, let's do away with them. He said, no, I want their sins to get full.
He kept that nation around for 400 years.
Yes, sir.
Before he finally got rid. But the moral of that is God is never going to let sin be gotten away with. Okay? Now, we'll be right here if the Lord says the same next week, and I know we kind of dealt with, and the reason I kind of backed up is Satan being the chief. Now we'll get into the devils and the hierarchy, how Satan works, how he uses his entourage, and Satan likes to copy what God does, but Satan does it in a wicked way. Okay. Now on this coming Friday, the youth department will be gathering in this room, and they're going to be dealing with the subject of breaking the cycle. They're going to be dealing with some issues that are facing our community. And I would assume that may get into some of the things I just made mention of too, not only our community, but what's going on in the United States of America. So they'll gather here at 7 o'clock. You're welcome to come by and to join them. And let us keep the Pollocks in our prayer. We prayed for them on this past Sunday. They had like 3-4 deaths. Right in a 2-week span. And Deacon Pollock lost his aunt, Elizabeth Sparks, and they will be funeralizing her on this coming Saturday at Nehemiah's Temple. Family will gather at 9:30 and the funeral will begin at 10. So we're going to leave this information here. Do not take it. You can copy it, but do not take it. And Sister Cassandra had sent word she wasn't going to be able to make it today, but she did turn in her homework. God bless her. Okay, let us stand. Yeah, don't be afraid to be challenged. You all, I appreciate you doing homework. Hold them, bring them next week. Okay? So you that didn't do it, you can cheat. You got another week to do your homework. Father, we honor you and thank you for allowing us to be here today. We thank you for this time of being able to go through the scriptures. Help us, Lord, that we'll apply your word, learn your word, and share with others. Continue to bless the Pollock family and encourage their heart. Lord, those that are sick and afflicted, minister to them heal and deliver, make whole. As we leave this place and go to our destinations until we meet again, Lord, protect us and keep us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
God bless.